Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire, and I hope you're having a great week. Today I'm going to share with you some fun techniques using Yupo paper. Back in my favorite crafty things video from last year, I mentioned that I really liked Yupo paper, but I haven't used it in a video, so a lot of people are asking what I do with it. So today I'm going to use it with Copic markers. You can use it with many other products, but Copics is something that many people are often looking for a new use for. I also have some tips for making shaker cards and creating an embossed window, and also for heat embossing on acetate. So I have a lot to share with you today. I'm using some new products from Hero Arts from their My Monthly Hero Kit, and I'm hoping that you like them. They are so much fun to play with. Now the Yupo paper that I'm using today is from Tim Holtz and Ranger and is white. Now this is a synthetic surface that feels like plastic. It's super smooth and very strong. It's almost impossible to tear, and it has such a unique surface that's unlike anything else I have, so it's really fun to use on cards. It's non-porous and water resistant, and you can do watercoloring on it actually, but what I like to use on it is alcohol inks. Now I know not many people have alcohol inks, so I thought I'd show you what you can do with Copic markers on this unique paper. So I'm going to use Copics today. If you don't have Copics, you can use any kind of permanent marker. I'm going to go ahead and cut all my pieces in half and show you some of the fun things that you can do with Copics on Yupo paper. Now if you watch, since this is a very smooth synthetic surface, the ink kind of moves around on it, and as opposed to like absorbing when you use regular paper cardstock. So you can see how it moves around here. So I can scribble colors on and then blend others with it. You can kind of erase color and put new color on. So you could really stamp with a permanent ink and then color with Copic markers. However, I find that kind of hard to control. I'd rather do coloring on regular paper. But with Yupo paper, you can take advantage of the fact that these alcohol ink markers move a little bit on the paper and do some really cool techniques. And that's what we're going to focus on today. These don't take much effort, which is one of the reasons that I really like them. And you can also get more out of your Copic markers. Find a new way to use them. Now again today I'm using my Copic markers. You could instead use your little alcohol ink bottles and drip it onto the surface, or you can use your Copic re-inkers. That's what I'm showing you here. I'm putting some drops of Copic re-inkers onto the paper, and you can see how it moves on the Yupo paper. It kind of bleeds out and does some really cool effects. Now I kind of just doing some scribbling here, nothing fancy, but check out how when you put one drop of Copic re-inker onto another drop, it really does some neat things, and when you let this dry, the results are fantastic. So remember, on Yupo paper you can use alcohol ink in little bottles or Copic re-inkers or other things, but today I'm just going to focus on the Copic markers alone. You can also use alcohol, rubbing alcohol, either from a bottle or from little swabs like this to make those inks move on the Yupo paper. I'll show a little bit with this later on. There are other things that you can use on Yupo, so I encourage you to check those out. There are many YouTube videos out there, but again, let's just play with Copics today. So here I have a piece of white Yupo paper, and I'm just going to go back and forth with a Copic marker. If you're interested in the colors that I use, I link those below in my YouTube description. Now if you notice when I go back and forth, since this is a very smooth synthetic surface, it's not regular cardstock. It doesn't absorb in and kind of even out and give you solid looking results. You can see that back and forth motion in the results, but it does kind of blend into each other and kind of become a little more solid over time. Now the fun thing is you can go back over the other color and blend it in with no problem at all. And check out this fun result that you get. Now I like to go back and repeat the whole process to really make it even more intense and to have more of those variations in the coloring so that it's not perfectly blended, but instead you get this really cool looking result. And remember, this is a very smooth surface, so it has a very different look to it than most cardstocks. The one on the left I did a while ago with some softer colors, and I think it's absolutely beautiful, the results you get. Now I'm going to kind of zoom in here so you can see how this ink moves on the Yupo paper a little bit more. This time I'm using the chisel end of my Copic marker. I usually don't use those, but since I'm trying to apply a lot of color at once, it's perfect for this technique. So I just went down and put a bunch of different colors, and then I went back and repeated that on top. Now I wanted to show you what happens when you take an alcohol swab and touch it to the surface. Watch how it starts to move. You could use a cotton swab and some rubbing alcohol, but really all I had in my house were these little alcohol swabs, and it worked great. I just held it into the tip of some tweezers. So when I put this rubbing alcohol against my Copic markers, it makes it move, and that's the cool effect that you get. You can also use your colorless blender Zero Copic marker. You can also use that to do this, or the re-inker for that. But I don't have one, so instead I'm just using rubbing alcohol. And check out the really cool movement that you get, and you can go back over areas if you want to. So now I'm just kind of continuing to do this until I'm really happy with the final results. And it kind of looks like a, I don't know, maybe like a granite or stone looking background, but this really cool rainbow result. And if you're not happy with the results on the Yupo paper, you could take an alcohol swab and just kind of go over the whole thing back and forth and basically start on all over again. Here's one that I did earlier with some softer colors, and you can see the look you get when it dries. It's really cool. So let me show you even more techniques that you can do very quickly with Copics on Yupo. Again, I'm starting the same way, where I'm scribbling lots of color down to kind of create a rainbow on the background of my white Yupo paper here. But this time I'm going to take a regular rubbing alcohol swab, and I'm going to just wipe back and forth over this surface. And it kind of moves that ink even more and creates even more variation that is such a beautiful look. So I'm just taking that alcohol swab and just wiping across a few times. This can allow you to make colors blend more or remove some of the color. But since I'm just doing a little bit, it really adds to the variation. Absolutely beautiful, very smooth looking because we're using that Yupo paper. Now for this example, I started the same way. I went back and forth with my markers several times. And this time I'm going on top of it with dots. I'm using the sharper point of my Copic marker here, the brush tip, and I'm just putting tiny dots all over the paper. Again, when you put the dot on the paper, it kind of halos out a little bit and blends into whatever's next to it. So then I'm moving on to the next color, being sure to overlap where the two colors meet. That helps to give that blended look. And we end up with this unique look of all these tiny dots overlapping and giving the look of texture. But this doesn't take much effort or thought or technique at all. You just kind of overlap them in between each color and look at that gorgeous look. The fact that this is smooth and looks like plastic is really cool. So here are a bunch of the backgrounds that I created today with Yupo papers and Copic markers. I'm going to turn those into cards now, but I encourage you to try Yupo. It's very inexpensive. You can use it with any permanent pens or alcohol inks, and there are many things you can do with it. I know many people use watercolor on it also. Now, if you find that the alcohol ink dries kind of sticky on the surface, you can just rub your anti-static powder tool over it, and that will remove the stick, and you'll have a great result. So now that I have some colorful Yupo paper backgrounds here, I wanted to turn those into simple shaker cards. I'm using a new stamp set from Hero Arts. This is part of their Hero Arts My Monthly April card kit. It's a fantastic set. Now, when I first got this, I wasn't sure, but once I started playing with it, I was in love because it feels like those days of playing with paper dolls or fashion plates where you kind of pick what dress you want with what top, with what hairdo, and you create your own little stamped image. This is another stamp set that's now available from Hero Arts with some other great images that I'll be using today. I also really like the sentiments in this one. Okay, so now it's time to create that stamped acetate window for the front of our shaker card window. Now I wanted to heat emboss on it, so I needed a heat-resistant acetate. I encourage you to try what acetate you may have or recycled clear plastic and test it with your heat gun and see if it holds up. If it doesn't hold up to the heat for heat embossing, you can just stamp on it with Stays-On ink, and that would work also. If you are going to heat emboss, be sure to use your anti-static powder tool or the powder will stick all over the acetate window. So after rubbing it with my anti-static powder tool, I stamped the shirt of one of the dresses from the Hero Arts monthly kit with Versamark ink, and then I added Hero Arts white embossing powder. You just want to be sure to knock off any of the extra powder or it really will show up on this clear window. Now what you see me doing here is allowing my heat gun to heat up for a long time. I have it on, it's just sitting there while I get other things ready. Then I bring that super hot heat gun to my image here and then I heat emboss it. The less time that heat gun is on that acetate, the less warping we will get. So I have the top stamped now, and it's time to stamp the pants too. You could do skirt or whatever you want, but I've put a piece of thin cardstock down. This is like masking a gap along my image that I can add a sentiment later. I wanted to leave a little spot there for my sentiment. Now the reason I'm not stamping these all at once and heat embossing them all at once is that it's hard to see what you stamped before on this clear without heat embossing it in between. So it's best to do one at a time. It adds a little bit of time, but it's definitely worth it. So once I've heat embossed my little person here, I actually put a crown on the top of it also. It's time to add the sentiment in the middle. I decided to use the You Go Girl image from this Hero Arts Dare to Dream stamp set. This is a great stamp set with very encouraging messages. Now it is a stacked sentiment with each word on top of each other, but I carefully cut them apart so that I can make the sentiment sit next to each other and fit in this little gap right along her legs. So I'm just going to use my little grid work surface here to make sure that I stamp that straight right along the middle of the image. Again, I used my anti-static powder tool in between each of these steps, making sure that we have a clean image every time. Once I'm done with all of my heat embossing, I'm just going to take a dry cloth and wipe away the excess anti-static powder that's on this so I have a nice clean window. Now it's time to create the window for our shaker card. I'm using the Hero Arts Nesting Rectangles die set. I really like this die set because it has so many rectangle dies in it. I picked the rectangle die that was the best fit for my stamped image. I'm going to use that to cut from the center of a piece of 4" by 5 1/4" white cardstock. This is going to be the front of my card. I'm going to cut a window from the center of it so that I can add my shaker card behind it. I'm using a T-ruler to make sure that I get it straight, because if this is even slightly tilted, it will really stand out on the final card. I'm going to run that through my die cut machine. You can use any die cut machine for this, and I end up with a nice die cut window. But I wanted to do something else to this. I wanted to emboss a frame around that window. This is a really easy technique. It's hard to see in the photo here, but I'll show you in the video in a moment. I'm taking that same rectangle piece that we just die cut from cardstock, and I'm putting a piece of white craft foam behind it that's slightly smaller. I'm going to lay that down onto my cutting plate and pop that same rectangle die into place. It pops in like a puzzle piece into that already die cut cardstock. Now when I run this through, it's going to cut my craft foam and it's going to press that rectangle die into the cardstock, leaving a little bit of impression. So I'm going to go ahead and pop out the center of my craft foam here, and I have a fun craft foam frame I can use to create the shaker window. And I have this impressed little frame around our little window. This is just a great way to add a little bit of interest to a shaker card and very easy to do. Okay, so now we have all of our pieces ready to create a shaker card. I have my white cardstock frame for the front of the window. I have my stamped acetate. I have a background for my shaker window and the dimensional craft foam frame that we can put in between so that we can have some little bits inside to shake around. Now for this, I like to use super strong adhesive. You don't want your shaker card to fall apart. You can use whatever your favorite adhesive is, but I really like this double-sided tape from Be Creative. I'm using the narrow version so that I can put it into tight spaces. So here I'm putting adhesive around the inside edge of our cardstock frame. So this is the piece that'll be topmost on our card. I like to overlap on the corners just to make sure it's nice and secure. Now I'm going to use my grid background to make sure that I put this straight over that stamped acetate piece. That's the front of our shaker window. Now I'm putting some double-sided tape on both sides of our craft foam window frame. This is going to go behind that and allow us to have some dimensions so the pieces can shake inside. Now you could just use any double-sided foam tape for the sides of the shaker window, but since we die cut this craft foam piece anyways to create that dimension or that embossed rectangle around our frame, I thought we might as well go ahead and use it. So now I've adhered this to the back of our cardstock frame, adding some sequins on the inside. The sequins I'm using here are from Pretty Pink Posh. I like them because they don't have a hole in the center. They just look like floating little crystals. I also have my background trimmed down and ready here. This is one of the Yupo backgrounds I created. And I adhered a few sequins onto the background using a strong adhesive. These will kind of hold some of the sequins in place in the background so that all your sequins don't kind of fall to the bottom of the card when you stand it up. So now I'm going to put this down onto the back of our little craft foam rectangle piece here and flip it over, and there we have a shaker card panel. All we have to do is add this onto the top of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card, and we're ready to go. Now because I glued some of those sequins in place on the background, the sequins don't all fall to the bottom, and some of them even get caught up on those sequins we glued down so that you have them kind of floating everywhere in the background, but they do move around freely. Now I end up creating many shaker cards using those colorful Yupo paper backgrounds. Be sure to head to my blog to see all of them, but before we go, I did want to show you one more thing. You can also heat emboss directly onto the Yupo paper if you wanted to. So this card will be a lot faster to put together since we're not doing the shaker portion of it. I have that colorful Yupo paper background, and I'm stamping with Versamark ink all the images and adding white embossing powder. After I let my heat gun get good and hot, I'm just carefully bringing the heat to the Yupo paper to heat emboss. Now the Yupo paper will start to warp a little bit, but it actually, if you lay it down on your work surface, will flatten out fine. You don't have to worry about it. This is actually a pretty good surface to heat emboss on if you're careful. And that smooth background really is cool. So now I can go ahead and add my sentiment once again. I had just masked off a little area there for the sentiment. And now I have white heat embossing on that Yupo paper background. I just trimmed it down and added it to a white note card. Very simple and fast to create, but those Yupo colored backgrounds really add a lot to it. So there you have ways to use Yupo paper with Copic markers and create shaker cards with an embossed rectangle window. If you want to see more videos that are similar, you can check those two there in the middle. You can also go to my blog for much more information, including giveaways and a fun blog hop. If you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button so you can see more, and I appreciate you stopping by. Have a great day.